Morning, folks. I think it's good to face your traumas, and it's good to admit when you're uncomfortable. I'm not saying you have to make a big stink about it in front of other people, but to not hide from the fact that you're uncomfortable. Not hide from the fact that something bothers you. I think some degree of human dysfunction, especially amongst my fellow men, is we suppress our traumas, our discomfort, and we hide it, and we're expected just to be stoic, just to suffer in silence and not think about it, and just be machines that move on regardless of how we're feeling. And it's not good for us. I'm going to give an example from my own life. I remember, I'm going to speak kind of vaguely to protect the privacy of my dad, but my dad had a grievance from his childhood that occasionally came up. Something bad that happened to him and some people. And it would come up occasionally. He mentioned how much he hated the people who did it. And it wasn't until like his mid-50s that he was able to find some degree of peace, to be reconciled with the people who hurt him. I remember he came home from a trip and was telling me about, very vaguely, that he was happy that so-and-so had a life like this and a life like that and did this, and it's really good to know they're doing okay. And it was his way, I think, of forgiving these people. And I didn't quite understand. I thought you hated these people. And I was young and clueless. And I'm glad he was able to be reconciled with them, right? It's a long time. A whole lifetime is a long time to live with a certain trauma. I'm sure it affected a lot of things. My father had an explosive temper. He was completely calm and chill until he was terrifying. And that's often a sign of emotional dysregulation. And I was similar, right? I was calm until I wasn't. I observed the behavior. I unconsciously picked up on the behavior, and I started repeating the behavior. Trauma begets trauma, and so on. And I found at least doing some of these videos, talking about the things I've talked about, has helped me cope and confront, traumas of my past and my own insecurities. I'm willing to admit I have insecurities. I'm human. I'm born into this body, and it has its limitations. It is interesting to me that suppressing your feelings, ignoring your traumas, not dealing with them, in a way, it might make you more inclined to anger, maybe rage, maybe violence. And in a very primitive circumstance, like Paleolithic humans, that would be an advantage in a very material sense, right? If you could fight with fury and rage, you have all this pent up misery, and you'd take it out on your enemies, man, you'd be a berserker warrior. Oh. But it really isn't good for us to do that. Schizo Dumps just did a video on this. And I encourage you to watch it. In fact, I'm going to link it in the description. It's important to deal with your traumas. So I'm going to deal with a problem I have. It's a kind of FOMO, fear of missing out. I do not like, I have always been frustrated with investing in something and having it not turn out the way I wanted it to. Now, I think that's born out of the fact, partially by the fact that I grew up in a social environment where I was nagged by my mom at home, and I'd go to school, I'd get picked on, for being, weird. And I didn't know I was autistic, and I had the facial tic, so whatever. All right. Always having, being on alert. Always having to be on alert. Always having to try to watch my back. Always just waiting for the next shoe to drop, because the next shoe was going to drop. And, whenever I set out to do something, there's someone or something that's going to nag the hell out of me. Now, some people adapt to that and say the world's full of shit. Everyone's going to nag on you because everyone's an asshole, and then you just carry on and you're fine, right? Now, I was raised with a philosophy that says you're supposed to love your neighbor, you're supposed to be patient, you're supposed to be kind and long-suffering and all that. So you're patient, kind, and long-suffering in a world of people attacking you all the time. It'll drive you absolutely bonkers. If I was raised with a more rough and tumble, selfish philosophy, I probably would have turned out a lot differently for the environment that I was growing up in. It is what it is. I am who I am now. So I don't like to invest in anything that's not going to pay off. And I've done a lot of investing in things that don't pay off. So, I try going to, taking classes. This is back in the early 2000s, like 2000, 2001. I took classes for Visual Basic Programming, trying to get the MCSD certification. Supposedly I'd be a competent programmer, right? And it didn't pay off, especially, ironically, my final instructor for the VB class, and I forget what the class was called. There's something about systems architecture. It was more about theory than actual practice. And she had Tourette's. And she had a verbal tic that was really, really bad. And she couldn't speak a sentence without saying there and interrupting you. So up here, there. I want to talk about there, there. And I'm trying to make sense of what she's saying. And I can't make sense of it. And I totally sympathize with her. Like, I know what it's like to have Tourette's. It sucks. So I withdrew from the course. I said, all right, I'll just pursue my studies at home. I had a Windows NT machine, and I had a Windows 98 machine, or a 95 machine, whatever, and I'll just try to do the whole practice for the exams by myself. Now, when I withdrew from the course, they asked me, why are you withdrawing? I told them, like, I can't understand what she's saying. She keeps saying the word there every other sentence, and she's got some verbal tic. I can't understand her. So when I emailed back and forth with a couple people that I became well acquainted. I wouldn't say friends, but acquainted with in the class. And they told me her tic stopped. Like, have you dropped out? Stopped. I'm like, oh, okay. But they also agreed that all the courses we took together were useless. I mean, between all of us, we might have thought of some sort of amazing application we could sell, but whatever. And then, of course, later in life, I tried doing the home locksmithing course. I ordered the whole thing, spent $800. This is back in $800 back in, 2009 or 10? And all I did was ruin locks, especially when I learned to try to disassemble them. I'm just clumsy-ass motherfucker. I suck. And I practiced my lockpicking all the time. Right, because basically, if you start an unlocking service, if nothing else, then that's where your revenue starts to come from, right? Less industrial installation or home installation, more just unlocking. Locked out of my car, I'm locked out of my house, and I practiced my picking. Now I could pick the door in my apartment fairly well. I'd say 60% success rate, which is pretty good. Every other lock, no, I wouldn't pick it for damn. Either I'd touch it barely and it would pop open, or I'd work at it, and I would fail. So you just need more practice. Just get more practice, you'll be okay. Just trust the system, trust the process. I didn't trust the process, so I wasn't getting anywhere. People talk about 10,000 hours to master a trade. I'm like, okay, but it only takes a few dozen hours to become basically competent, right? So, you think a master lock picker might pick a lock in 30 seconds. That takes me 10 minutes as a noob. But, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it better. I'm like, fuck this. And I kept brewing hardware. Like, if I'm going to learn how to use all this hardware, like if I end up getting a job where I'm going to install like push bars and stuff on commercial doors, then like I need to buy the hardware and play with it, and to get the rate at which I'm destroying the innards of these locks by, because I practice repinning also, and I'd end up damaging the springs and all this. It's a waste of time. It's a big fucking waste of time. And I invested all the time I could. It was the wrong path for me. All right. My marriage was a wreck from the time from the day of the wedding onward. Not that there weren't good moments, okay? And my ex-wife watches my videos. I acknowledge that there were some good times, okay? But almost every dating relationship has just been a disaster. And almost every job I've taken has been a disaster. Now, I thought being an exterminator was going to be like the career for me, and it was just a nightmare of overwork and intense frustration and ever-escalating expectations. Now, that comes from being excellent, from being like, I have a can-do attitude, I'm going to go get it. And then, of course, the more you do, the more they expect of you. And that's true in every workplace, right? The burnout, the go-getter who gets burned out. And, I worked 13 years at one warehouse as my longest job. And, that was it was supposed to be a lifeboat job, but it turned out to be a life. And 13 years with a boss that I was terrified of and miserable, right? I was miserable, he almost seemed to know it. Now, if he sees this, maybe, he'll correct me. But it seemed like there was a time where every like Friday, oh, Steve's going to be miserable this week. I'm going to go give him grief about something. And he would chew me out for something. And then I spent all weekend making myself sick, like just worrying myself sick. And I come in with a cold sore on Monday, or I end up get with an actual cold on Monday because I wrecked my immune system with anxiety and an infection took over. Anyways, this is not blaming other people. All right? I don't hate my old boss. Okay, I eventually stood up to him. This is during the COVID lockdown, and I didn't care if he was angry. Whatever. I told that story in another video, so I'm not going to go into it right now. I'll link to it up there or something. But our whole life, most of my life has been investing in things that just turned to shit. And so I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired of disappointment. I'm tired of trying and failing all the time. You think, well, who's this guy who fails? I thought you were at an IQ of 140-ish. I'm like, I do. But I've always walked a path that just didn't, was the wrong path, at least materially. Because when I was, young, I asked why. Why do I have to fit in this world? Why does the world work the way it is? Not how, right? Like, especially the psychopath, all right? We talk about Hidden America, his channel. I'll link to that also in the description below. Talked about the normies and the psychopaths and the schizos. All right, obviously I'm a schizo. I'm one of the flavors of schizo, and I asked why. And so my life's been miserable because I continue to ask why instead of just stop thinking and just do. Stop thinking and just do, and start liking it. God damn it. Okay, you're doing this, you're gonna like it. And it doesn't work that way. I had a friend who criticized me who said, you never finish what you begin. I'm like, well, because everything I begin turns to shit. I'm always on the wrong path. I feel like I'm a character dropped into a world I don't belong in. And so here we are in the current year. I'm going to link it all together. I'm going to start talking about Iran and our war with Iran, this shit show. And we may be facing fuel shortages. Now, there's other countries that are going to face it more acutely because they get the bulk of their oil through there and bulk of their gas, which is really sad. I feel for the people of Sri Lanka and whatever, and Vietnam. And, I swear, the past like century and a half has been shitty for East Asia. Just communism and then whatever. Just they don't get a fucking break, do they? But we may face fuel shortages, and it might just be reflected by, because we're in a capitalistic system, just very high prices, right? Get squeezed. And maybe there'll be travel restrictions, maybe there won't. Maybe it's going to be COVID 2.0, COVID, so to speak. Not to the same degree of don't socialize with each other, but it'd be like don't travel, right? And just the practical side, just a fuel restriction, either through cost or rationing, would definitely put hamper on travel. You know, two people I love, absolutely love, who used to live in my town, they moved. They moved half an hour away by car. It'd be an all-day march on foot, which I probably should get good at doing that. But like if there's these sort of fuel restrictions, I may never see him again. And that bothers me. So what do I do? Like, as you know, I'm like $5,000 in credit card debt. Just life's just kicking me in the face, and life's unfortunate. And I'm not saying woe is me. I'm just, car trouble, cat seriously ill, and it just added up. And I've been trying to pay it off with this caretaker job I do. I take care of a handicapped person. And last year I mowed a few lawns. Didn't really help much. Yeah, I submitted my taxes, and like my after expense profit was like a couple $100, which is normal for a startup, right? Because I had to keep buying equipment and fixing things, and yeah, a couple $100. And this year could be better, right? But here's the thing, if we end up like Sri Lanka, having to scan a QR code per vehicle to buy fuel. What about fuel for your gas-powered appliances, like your lawnmowers and or whatnot? You're going to be able to do that or not? I don't know. And so I'm thinking, well, if I get a scythe, right here, I'm thinking of how to adapt to scarcity. And if I get a scythe, then I can still mow grass. I'd have to practice with the scythe, but I could, in theory, mow people's lawns even when you can't get gas for your lawnmower. Or, I could build a wagon. Instead of driving to the different jobs, I could build a wagon or a rickshaw of sorts, and then carry my tools in it and just pull that around, whether with a bicycle or just by hand, or put a harness on my shoulders and pull it around, whatever. And I can go around, do, my odd jobs, someone needs a little fix of this and little fix of that. And I put the lawnmower in the rickshaw. I can mow the grass, put a couple gallons of water, because walking around in the heat in the summer is going to be really miserable. But it could be doable, right? I definitely lose more weight. I definitely get, if I don't get more physically fit, at least it'd be less fat. But I also have this debt, and the easiest way to pay off the debt is just to get a job. Night shift and just suffer through it. And that means I'd have to stop doing karaoke at the local fraternal club because I wouldn't have time for it. If I'm working night shift 5 days a week, then that ain't going to work. Now, here's the thing. If I take the job, say I have to commute to Concord or Manchester or whatever, or whatever, some major city, and that's half an hour or 45 minutes away from me, or an hour away from me, which would be fine if the fuel costs were lower. But if you end up with $6, $7, $8 a gallon, damn. If it ends up being rationed, then it may not even be practical, right? It's one thing if it costs a lot. Okay, so you just make less money per day that you work. But on the other hand, if we're dealing with fuel rationing, then actually commuting any kind of long distance ain't going to work. And a lot of our economy here, a lot of people in New Hampshire, like as far north as like Concord, will drive to Boston every day. In fact, there was a guy in my town that would drive from here to Malden Mills. Man, that's forever and a day. You spend like, I don't know, 90 minutes on the road one way, 2 to 3 hours round trip, plus 8 hours on the job. Must have made some good money. Also, people stop saying what if, and just pick something and run with it and see how it pays off, right? And if I were more narrow-minded, more simple-minded, I would say, I need money. Go get money. Which is probably the right thing. But also making preparations for long-term scarcity, which I started to do back with the Rona lockdown. So when where I was working, my place of employment, to their credit, okay, for the month of, I think it was April or perhaps May. I can't remember now. We had they had to assess how many people they actually wanted to employ and how many people they want to retain. So they let go some people, and then we were working every other day while they were figuring out, their staffing concerns. So I would work either 2 or 3 days a week, but I got paid for 5 days. So basically, if I showed up the day before, if I showed up Monday and I showed up Wednesday, then I would get paid for Tuesday. So that month, I spent my days off building garden boxes and taking care of my tools and, doing these sort of home economy type stuff. Because I didn't know how bad things were going to get. I didn't know how bad that the authoritarianism was going to get. So that's my same feeling now is, okay, well, if the authoritarianism gets worse and we can't travel or you can't buy enough fuel, then I'm going to have to find some way to survive. And the more I practice that shit now, the better off I'll be then, even with the debt. I mean, whatever. The dollar's going to get inflated away, in which case that I'd be paying off a debt with useless money, And I don't. So here's the thing. I have to admit, now I know I have to make a decision, okay? I have to make a decision what I'm going to do and just do it and then see how it plays out. I get that. But I'm admitting here, this is the climax. You've been here almost 23 minutes now, that I am insecure about picking a path and having it turn to shit on me. I'm sick of it. I'm so tired of the efforts I put in not paying off. I'm tired of just things not playing out the way I want them to. And I look at how many people who are just so well adjusted, the only thing they ask is how. They trust everything they're taught. They never think critically about it. They just follow the practical wisdom and the little one-liners, and they always put 3% of their income into the 401k, and it continues to grow and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And they end up finding another average normie person that they're compatible with, and they end up, being a couple and whatever, they get to have sex once a week and just to have a normal life. And it seems to, it's not great. And there's still ups and downs in life, but there's there's functioning. It works. There's payoff. Now, I had friends who fucked off in high school and just kept studying computers. This was back in the 90s, right? And I had a friend who he barely graduated. By the age of 20, he got his CCNA certification and his MCSE certification and a few other networking, prestigious corporate networking, whatever, related stuff. Got himself a job at a search engine as a NOC, what they call it, Network Operations Center person. And this back when there was lots of search engines. It wasn't just 2 or 3. It was like everyone was in the game. And used that experience, and he got his other certification. He ended up getting a job for Cisco, making lots of money. And even though he had to go to work sometimes, most of the days he stayed home in I remember coming to visit him. He had 4 computers set up playing EverQuest. He's sitting in his underwear. He's in his boxer shorts and a t-shirt. I went over to visit him one day. He's like, oh, just a minute, dude. I'm going to finish this game up. He just sitting around in his boxer shorts playing EverQuest and getting paid for it, taking the occasional phone call. Just very quickly worked his way up into this a comfortable position at, it all paid off for him. He just looked at the universe and said, how do I make this work for me? And while he did have general opinions on politics, he was generally libertarian and kind of conservative. How? Where I was asking why. And while I do figure out how to do things, I admit I've lived with this impending sense of doom. I don't know if it's just from the way I grew up and all the traumas I talked about, or really just the vibration of the universe is saying, dude, you don't fucking belong here. And it's true, I don't fucking belong here. And so, why would I say how? Why would I put aside all other concerns and just focus on how to make lots of money doing the thing that I fit into? Yo, that's my insecurity. I'm living with it. I was just about to get online, order some seeds. I want to grow some plants to supplement my quail's food, because I may not be able to buy. If there really is a farming problem and stuff, I may not be able to buy feed for them. And a lot of people are totally dependent on, commercial feed to feed their chickens, their ducks, and their quail, and so on. So I have to do, I'm looking up what wild plants can I feed them, what wild seeds can I feed them, and how do I grow more? So I'm going to make the punt and try to do that. Now, that's not incompatible with working a night shift job, because, you don't have to go out and tend to fucking, garden box every day. You just plant the shit, you make sure it's growing, you make sure it's sufficiently watered, and you let it do its thing, right? Plants take time, But part of me thinks this quail thing was probably a mistake, because chickens are a lot more self-sufficient. Quail have to be in a cage. Turnix quail have to be in a cage. Bobtail whites, well, they'd probably take off and fly away and join a wild flock, I guess. So chickens can roam around. Yeah, you got to watch out for foxes and coyotes and stuff, but generally they're self-maintaining. When the weather's decent, they'll peck at bugs, they'll peck at plant matter. You throw them your vegetable scraps, and they're fine. They eat a little bit of feed, but mostly they find what they need just foraging the yard. These are high maintenance. I got them because I didn't want the USDA to kill my chicken flock. When they're going around killing chicken flocks for a while, I'm like, well, if I want to get into egg laying, it better be something they're not going to get at, right? Well, now I got big old, cages I got to lug around wherever the hell I'm going to live for my quail to live in. Again, something that didn't pay off. Yeah, I'm getting some eggs from it, getting little tiny eggs. Feed most of them to the dog, but again, I get some eggs, but it didn't pay off the way I expected it to. Great, lesson learned, wisdom gained. I'm tired of lesson learned, wisdom gained. But can I just have success? I want more success and less wisdom. I'm tired of saying, whoa, mistakes are a chance to learn. Well, gee, I've learned so much. I'm so blessed. I'm so fucking blessed with all the setbacks, all this wisdom, all this knowledge I've gained. Isn't it great? I'm so wise. I'm so wise that I got $5,000 in credit card debt. All right, that's it, folks. 29 minutes and 30 seconds. Holy shit. Thanks for watching.